Man, I am so happy the season's not over. Duke basketball on to the Sweet 16, a date with Rick Pitino in St. John's.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. So great to have you here with us today on Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we're talking with our guy, Kevin Connelly from Durham, about this game between Duke and St. John's coming up in the Sweet 16. We'll highlight the Blue Devils' 23-point win over TCU in the round of 32 and so much more. Jon Scheyer had comments recently about Caleb Foster and whether or not he'd be available to play in this game for the Blue Devils. So we'll get into all of that and so much more here on Locked On Blue Devils. Let's bring Kevin on into the show to chat with me here about a Duke team that for the third straight year is going back to the Sweet 16 under head coach Jon Scheyer, thanks in part to a 23-point win over TCU. 4-point game at halftime. Duke took over in the second half. The Boozer twins had 4 combined points in the first half before they really set the tone and took over. On to the Sweet 16 they go. Kevin, I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing good, JJ. Thanks for having me. Listen, I think more uneasy nerves in that TCU game, right? Especially the first segment of the second half when TCU took a 2-point lead. And then a timeout was called and Duke settled in and they realized that they could get the ball inside to Cayden Boozer and let him go to work. And its defense did its thing. However you want to judge the officiating, certainly the missed goaltend was, I think everyone can agree, a really bad call. And it got compounded by Jamie Dixon then voicing his frustration to the referees and the technical foul. And Duke was kind of off to the races after that. TCU kind of lost their composure, I think. And Duke took full advantage. So you don't apologize for winning in this tournament because that's the name of the game, right? There's no more style points. As long as you have one more point than the other team, you're advancing to the next round. And that's what Duke did. And the final 13 minutes or so of that second half were really dominant.
Yeah, even if it takes you all the way till the last second and time expires and you're hitting the last bucket, as St. John's did, Duke's opponent. We'll get to that a little bit later. But what a big-time win it was for Duke. Everybody stepped up in a game like this. And the biggest storyline for the Blue Devils against TCU, Kevin, was a player rode in on a knee rover scooter and yet took part in the competition, took part in the game. Of course, we're referencing Patrick Ngongba II, who had been sidelined for 5 games, made his big return. There were foul trouble for Duke from time to time, but it's a good thing. And, Ngongba got into foul trouble, I should say, but that's the luxury of him being back and available is that, okay, well, now it's a little bit more Maliq Brown and Cayden Boozer where we've been. 12-9 from Maliq Brown, an all-around big game. But again, it was good to see Ngongba back in the fold for Duke.
You can make the argument he was the most important player in this game, JJ. 13 minutes, and he was a plus 20 out there on the floor, completely changed things with his defense at times. You saw his ability to pass the ball in those high-low situations. You would think there was a little bit of rust, and maybe there was with those 4 fouls and 4 turnovers that he racked up. But listen, it just further proved how important of a player he is for the success of this team. And the fact that he was a plus 20 in 13 minutes was that really jumped off the stat sheet.
Yeah, I mean, he made his impact felt both defensively and offensively. You mentioned kind of the big-to-big passing. Some of his finishes still, I mean, were so tough. The catches right around the rim and then immediately able to kind of lay it in. It was like, okay, he's good. He's back in rhythm and whatnot. But I want to give love to Maliq Brown, who did start. A lot of people curious, okay, if Ngongba was back, does that mean he's immediately into the starting lineup? And no, Maliq Brown still started there at the 5 for Duke. And Brown goes for 12 points and 9 rebounds, went 3 of 4 from the free throw line, which is one of the weakest parts of his game. But the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament, I highlighted this on yesterday's show, have been the exact same. They've both been alley-oops to Maliq Brown to put Duke on top early. And I really was a big fan of what we saw out of Maliq in this one.
Especially because I feel like we've seen him struggle a little bit, JJ, right? I think you would agree. He did not play his best game against Siena in the round of 64 in the ACC tournament. Kind of had some low points as well. And that's where the questions came in was, can this team win the national championship without Pat Ngongba? And the resounding answer, I think, was no from a lot of people. Just because you're playing 6 or 7 guys, you're missing a 6'11" player that can change the game on both ends of the floor. So, but Maliq Brown, he played really, really well against TCU. And, he's kind of a Swiss Army knife that I think Jon Scheyer can implement in a couple different ways against St. John's on Friday night.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited to see how he continues to go because, it's surreal knowing that regardless of draft decisions, regardless of maybe jumping into the transfer portal and looking elsewhere, this is it for Maliq Brown. Like, he's out of college eligibility. So we've got that feeling now in the Duke basketball world. As soon as the game starts, this might be the last time you see Maliq Brown wear that jersey. And so soaking it all in and kind of the impact that he's made as the ACC's Sixth Man of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. Let's talk about another standout performer, Dame Sarr, big-time shot maker in the NCAA tournament, 4 3-point shots against TCU, big-time zone buster in stretches like that, and still the defensive impact that Sarr has. It's unreal to see him get better game after game.
I think he's the true X factor, right? Because I don't think you can call Cam Boozer obviously an X factor. I don't think you can call Isaiah Evans an X factor. I don't think you can necessarily call Cayden Boozer an X factor anymore because of Caleb Foster's status. I think Dame Sarr is the X factor because you know what he's going to bring on a night in, night out basis defensively and how he can be a disruptor on that side of the floor. But it's always been the offense. It's been, where has the offense been? And, I think he came into the game against TCU under 30% from 3-point range or right around there. And now with what he did, he's just over 31%, close to 32%. And it's always been the question of offenses. Can he make shots? And he did against the Horned Frogs in that big run in the second half that eventually allowed Duke to pull away, get some breathing room, and come away with the win. So I think when you're looking at this team, Dame Sarr is the clear X factor just because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get on a night in, night out basis.
But if they get performances like they've been seeing as of late, I think we're all going to be satisfied because Sarr has really turned a corner. He's looking more comfortable for this Duke team. Isaiah Evans continues to knock down shots from the outside, and the Boozer twins, well, they get the job done each and every night for Duke. Caleb Foster, though, his status remains uncertain. It's up in the air. Jon Scheyer provided a little bit of an update. We'll react to that more when Locked On Blue Devils continues in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. The biggest stretch of college basketball is here. March Madness, buzzer beaters, bracket busters, and those unforgettable moments that everyone's talking about the next day. Being there live for something like that, that's bucket list stuff. The hard part is actually getting tickets. Long waiting queues, prices jumping around, surprise fees at checkout. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage with constant innovation. It's how you unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Incredibly simple to use, the Game Time guarantee means 100% legitimate tickets delivered on time at the best price. Here's the best part, guys. Fees are included in the price you see, and what you see is what you pay, period. No stress, no guesswork, just a smooth experience from start to finish. I got to love the seat view opportunity. That feature is a game changer where you could see a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today's show also brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Again, spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of those boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. Listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? Well, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Don't forget, guys, about the Everydayer Club as well. You can get your first month of the Everydayer Club for free when you use code MARCH. You'll unlock ad-free episodes and entry into our private listener group chat where I'm hanging out daily. Check out the link in the show notes or go ahead and go to lockedonbluedevils.supercast.com to claim your free month. Come join us over in the Everydayer Club with Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Kevin Connelly's hanging out with me today on the program. We're talking about Duke moving on to the Sweet 16. The Boozer twins, they're winners at the end of the day, and this is what we're talking about this time of year. They've had a renowned high school career, decorated in the EYBL circuit, and now here they are, 2 wins in the NCAA tournament and trying to build to that resume. Caleb Foster's injury has forced Cayden Boozer to take a much larger role. That has been critical for Duke. You referenced that just a moment ago with him not being as much of an impact player because of that. But Kevin, if you could, just speak to what we've seen out of Cayden Boozer here lately.
I mean, it's been remarkable, really. And I know I've brought up the Florida State game in the ACC tournament a couple of times, but, you know, the struggles there and teams, for the most part, I feel like have continued to defend him in that manner, maybe not as dramatic, but not guarding him on the perimeter. And he's been able to adjust and figure out, if they're not guarding me on the perimeter, I can get a head of steam coming right down from half court and put up a floater or put in a bank shot. And he's shooting these extremely high percentages, and they've been timely baskets as well. So it's been a seamless transition, I think, from Caleb Foster to Cayden Boozer as this team's starting point guard. And it's been needed because if he hasn't had the games that he did against Siena or even against TCU, it's a Duke team that could be out of this tournament already.
Yeah, I mean, he's stepped up when he's been needed to, knock down a couple of three-point shots. Obviously, you'd love to see him get more, and the percentage was never going to be at the level of Caleb Foster because he's been playing so well. And Foster is such a big leader on this team. Obviously, he's got the NCAA tournament experience from his first 2 years on campus, although missed the NCAA tournament as a freshman, and here he is missing 2 games already. Now the question is, when do we get to see Caleb Foster back out on the floor from that fractured foot? Played this yesterday on the program, but Jon Scheyer was on the Eye of College Basketball podcast with John Rothstein and had some really interesting things to say about Caleb Foster.
John, if Duke were to continue to advance in the NCAA tournament, is there a chance that we could see Caleb Foster?
Well, not to reference Dumb and Dumber, but it's when he first got hurt, I felt there's more like 1 in a million, you know, when thinking back on that. Since then, since he's gotten hurt, Caleb, the way that he's worked, the chances have continued to increase. And you know, I even think there's an outside chance maybe for Friday. I know in Caleb's mind, it was last Friday where he feels he could have done something, which he couldn't have. Yeah. But he's trying to do the impossible here and come back as soon as he can. And, you know, I think this weekend, I don't think I can rule it out because of who he is and how he's been working.
So you're saying there's a chance. As Jon Scheyer said, we're referencing Dumb and Dumber there. It's just so hard to buy this, Kevin. When you just, again, we talked about a lot, you know, when the injury first took place, we asked ChatGPT and Google, how long do these foot fractures typically take to recover from? And overwhelmingly, the common answer was 6 to 8 weeks. And this timeline, man, I mean, I'm all for Caleb Foster back in the fold for Duke. And I think they're going to do everything possible to make sure it's a safe return from injury. But this just seems wild that would even be possible for him to be back on Friday.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Just from a logistical standpoint, right, JJ? I mean, so tip-off on Friday would be, let's look at the calendar, March 27th, right?
Yep.
That is 19 days after he had surgery on March 8th.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't
That's
make
not
sense.
even 3 weeks.
Exactly. And so like I think it's the outside shot that he could return if they were to make the Final Four. That's my opinion. That's what we said after the game against North Carolina. Now, I will say this. There's no benefit for Duke, for St. John's, for anybody to rule him out on Monday.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? Give the idea, give the perception to Rick Pitino, to St. John's, that he could play. Make them have to deviate a game plan in case he does play. Now, I'm sure they know that he's not going to play. And if he does, it's going to be extremely limited minutes, and he's not going to be as effective as he was a month ago when he was fully healthy. But just leave that question up in the air. There will be an availability report that comes out, I guess, Thursday afternoon or Thursday night, and then again leading up to the game on Friday. But yeah, just leave that possibility that, hey, we could have this guy in our back pocket ready to go. But I think most people don't think he's going to be ready to play, just because the pure timeline aspect of it, that 19 days prior, he was sitting in an operating room, and you're telling me then now he's going to play in what is going to be a highly physical and highly intense game. And if he does, which again, I don't think he does, he's not going to be anywhere close to even 50%.
Yeah, you'll be in the building there in D.C. throughout the weekend, and so it'll be interesting looking at this game, Kev, because I know that a lot of people get excited about the open practice opportunities and, hey, here are these teams on the floor. What is the status of him in a boot versus the knee rover scooter? I mean, we'll get a chance to see him a little bit before that, and then as you mentioned, you'll have the availability report that comes out a little bit later and whatnot to kind of check off certain things. But I mean, we still haven't seen this guy walking normal. Like, he still has had the scooter every single time we've seen him. The boot has been there for Foster the whole time. I love, though, how active he's been in timeouts and in huddles. I think the TV broadcasts have done a good job of showing some of those things, of Foster being locked into the game and being able to be a sounding board. Cayden Boozer has talked about that. But yeah, let's see what he looks like. Let's see if he still has that boot and scoot. Although Ngongba taught us, even if I'm, using this knee rover, it doesn't mean I'm ruled out.
Yeah, I mean, Ngongba rolled up into the arena, no pun intended, on the scooter and in a boot, and still played, which I think it's an interesting conversation, because like he's not dealing with soreness, right? I think everyone can agree with that. It's not soreness that he's in a boot until 45 minutes before the game, and then before the team even gets back to the locker room, he's back in the boot and on a scooter. At least he was on Saturday against TCU. Like, that's not just like, hey, my foot's sore. Like, there's something going on there. But he's playing through it. He's fighting through it. It obviously took him, 2.5 weeks to be able to get on the court from when he played on March 1st to the March 20th game against TCU. So there's something going on there as well. But you give him credit. He's fighting through it. I don't think Caleb Foster, at least this weekend, is going to be able to fight through anything. I think he's still going to be on the shelf. And then you potentially cross your fingers and do everything possible if he could be on the floor if Duke were to advance to the Final Four. And
then you need other guards to step up, like we've been seeing. We've highlighted a lot of guys on the roster for Duke this year, and we've seen Cayden Boozer take the majority of the workload there handling the basketball. Cam Boozer's helped out in that regard. Isaiah Evans has had a lot of really tough finishes around the rim, even when the three-point shot hasn't been falling. We talked Dame Sarr. I guess the one guy that we haven't talked about quite yet, and the improvement that he's had so far this season, and we saw it again in the tournament this past weekend. How about Nick Kamenya, Kevin, and kind of where Nick dials in and fits into the Duke basketball equation right now?
Listen, I said it earlier in the season. This is a guy that does all the dirty stuff. Like, he'll rebound, he'll box out, he'll play good defense. And then occasionally you're going to get games where he's hitting shots from the outside and he's performing at a really, really high level. You look in the game against TCU, he's able to hit a three. He's able to get to the free throw line a couple of times. He's able to come up with some of those hustle plays that necessarily don't show up in the box score. You saw some of that against Siena as well in that round of 64 matchup. And in the ACC tournament, he had better scoring games against Clemson and against Virginia, making big plays in those games. So kind of another X factor like Dame Sarr. You look at those two guys, the two freshmen, how are they going to perform under the bright lights and in pressure moments? And so far in this tournament, they performed pretty well in those situations.
All right, so Duke now moving on to the Sweet 16, where they will take on St. John's, the Red Storm. They're advancing to the Sweet 16, and an opportunity for Duke, a team that they've gone up against many times. We'll see how it plays out coming up on Friday in Washington, D.C. Let's take our next time out here on the show. Locked On Blue Devils will continue. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. No longer just a spectator. Play-by-play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Robinhood is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Let me tell you also about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The tournament is here. March Madness has arrived. One of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, nonstop action from tip-off to the final cutting of the nets. And right now, FanDuel is giving customers a new way to stay in the tournament action all way long. Here's the best part. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days. And that means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. Mix it up however you want. Perfect, because every day there's something new, different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on all the action. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, last few moments here on the show today. JJ Jackson hanging out with my pal Kevin Connelly from Durham. We're talking about Duke getting set for the Sweet 16, a matchup in Washington, D.C., taking on the St. John's Red Storm. And Kevin, I just mentioned our very good friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. They put some new numbers out to get this thing started with Duke taking on St. John's. And right now, the Blue Devils open up as a 6.5-point favorite against Rick Pitino's bunch, a 141.5 total in the over-under there. And this whole season, pretty much, when you're the #1 overall seed, we have been hard-pressed to find games where Duke doesn't open and close as the favorite.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, the Monday morning quarterback and all that after the first weekend of the NCAA tournament and the way Duke looked at times in their first two games and the way St. John's wins on a buzzer beater and they've become the talk of the tournament. A person here, a person there suggests that they think St. John's could win, and then Duke fans on social media take that as the biggest slap in the face, and they get to play the underdog role. And it's like, okay, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to say the team that's favored to win as the #1 overall seed is going to take an underdog role in this situation, but that's just fans on social media, right? They're just trying to build hype any way they can going into this game. But no, I think it's a fair number. It's not the biggest number of a #1 seed in the Sweet 16. But St. John's has been a quality team all year. When you look at the nuanced numbers, the real detailed analytics, the numbers say that they've been one of the best teams in the country over the last month of the season or so. So it certainly is going to be high stakes and high drama on a Friday night in DC.
Well, St. John's, we've talked about before, is a team that you cover, very well what this program is all about and the matchups specifically. What do you find most fascinating about the basketball matchups that will play out themselves?
Honestly, I think it's Isaiah Evans. I don't know if St. John's has somebody that can match up with the skill type of Isaiah Evans. I think he could be the biggest difference in a game like this. You look at a guy like Zuby Ejiofor, he can match up against either Pat Ngongba or Cameron Boozer. A guy like Dylan Mitchell is a Swiss Army knife who can defend multiple positions. He's very athletic. He spent time in the Big 12 at Texas and Cincinnati and now at St. John's. But when you're looking at it, I think he could spend some time on Isaiah Evans. Bryce Hopkins, who started his career at Kentucky, has been playing phenomenal basketball over the last 6 games for St. John's. The interesting thing where I think the matchups could lend itself in favor of St. John's, at least in the front court, is when Pat Ngongba isn't on the floor. Yeah. Because St. John's could put Zuby Ejiofor on Cam Boozer, which that's a matchup I think St. John's would feel pretty comfortable with their best player against Duke's best player. They could then put Mitchell on Evans, and then you're not losing that much from a defensive standpoint if a guy like Bryce Hopkins, who is 6'8", is going against a guy of Maliq Brown, who is not a traditional offensive threat, and he's not giving up a major size advantage for. So I think the front court lends itself in favor of Duke when Ngongba is on the floor, because even though St. John's is a big, talented front court, Ngongba just has a different dimension where it'll make things difficult for St. John's to match up with Duke defensively. And on the other side, I think when you're looking at St. John's offensively, it's a team over the last 2 games that shot a lot of 3-pointers, and they don't necessarily shoot it well, but they have guys who have stats that are capable of hitting 3-pointers. Isaiah Sellers, Joe Sansanin, Ian Jackson. Those are guys that can take threes and make threes. And mention a guy like Bryce Hopkins, who had not been a 3-point shooter, but against Kansas, he makes 6 shots. All of them are from 3-point range, and they were all major factors in them winning.
Several early, a few late. I mean, he sprinkled it in at the perfect times.
Yeah, and then the one guy we haven't talked about who had really been struggling offensively is the hero of their game against Kansas, and Dylan Darling, a small but scrappy point guard, doesn't back down from a challenge, but he has really struggled with his offensive game over the last 8 to 10 games of the season. But who knows? Maybe he gets a jolt of confidence from that game-winning buzzer-beating layup to beat Kansas on Sunday.
Let me go back to the Duke defense then with you. Where is Dame Sarr best equipped in something like this? Because everybody's going to look at the headlines and they're going to see Zuby Ejiofor in the interior and in the post. And Duke's like, cool. Maliq Brown, Pat Ngongba, Cam Boozer. Like, I'm throwing out tons of options there. Dame Sarr, we both agree, has been such a vital part for what Duke wants to do defensively. So where do they get that jolt from Sarr in this matchup?
I think they put him on Hopkins. Because, and I'm still assuming that Ngongba is going to come off the bench in this game. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to see Boozer and Ejiofor guard each other. And Dylan Mitchell is not an offensive player. He's not a scorer, but he does so many other things. And I think if Duke puts Maliq Brown on him, that can kind of help, because he's so good at deflecting passes. That can kind of help neutralize that aspect of the floor. But I could see, given the way Bryce Hopkins has played over the last 6 games, where Duke will put Dame Sarr on him. And then in the backcourt, I think Cayden Boozer will get the matchup against Dylan Darling, at least to start the game, as the team's starting point guards. And then you're looking at Isaiah Sellers, who can be a knockdown shooter. I think Isaiah Evans would probably be on him. So it's a fascinating matchup. You can break it down in so many other ways, and also add the fact that the guy on the sidelines for St. John's, he knows how to win these games. Rick Pitino is very adept at winning Sweet 16 games. His record, JJ, in the Sweet 16, 12-1.
Whew. Yeah.
So you give him a week to prepare for an opponent. He's going to have a game plan that's going to have his team competitive. I don't know if St. John's is going to win, but I don't think this is going to be a runaway from Duke. Yeah,
I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch unfold coming on Friday. Well, Kevin, this has been awesome. I'm hopeful for Duke going into the week. Excited to see this play out. And then after the Duke and St. John's game, we'll see UConn take on Michigan State, the 2 versus 3 in the East region, and set up a very fun, exciting Elite Eight matchup on Sunday. Hopefully Duke is playing in that one. I mentioned that you're going to be there in DC for this all to unfold. How can people follow and support your work, Kev?
Yeah, man, I'm covering this from every single aspect. BallDurham.com, StormThePaint.com, CBBHQ on SI. JJ, this is not just a regional final weekend. This is like with the storylines, the coaches, the programs. This feels like a Final Four almost.
Yeah.
With these teams in there. So I can't wait to get to DC on Thursday. Just got back from San Diego yesterday. So I don't know what day it is anymore. We're just rolling with the punches. It's March Madness, but heading down to DC on Thursday for the weekend. So really looking forward to that. Should be exciting. Can't wait to see what the crowd's going to be. Most expensive Sweet 16 ticket in NCAA tournament history. Did I see that right? So it should be. Duke's got a national fan base. St. John's and UConn are right down the road. It's gonna be awesome, man. It's gonna be awesome.
Great to see you, Kev. We'll talk soon, okay?
See you, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Go support his work. Follow him on X at Kevin Connelly24. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Follow the show on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram and TikTok. Give us a follow over there. Check out the Everydayer Club. Subscribe to us for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review on Apple Podcasts. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you and good day.